Nobody remembers who left it there. That is the first thing you need to know. The stuffed orangutan sitting on the bottom shelf of the supply room had no record of arrival, no purchase order, no name tag, no story attached to it. It had been there long enough that the fur at the shoulders had gone slightly flat and the Velcro patches at the wrists had collected a thin layer of dust. The keeper staff walked past it every day without noticing it. It was just a thing on a shelf. The way supply rooms are full of things on shelves that nobody thinks about until someone needs them. On the morning of July 26th, someone needed it. His name was Leo. He was 500 grams. He had been alive for less than 12 hours, and he was lying on a concrete ledge in 90-degree heat because the mother who delivered him that morning had looked at him once and turned away. The keeper who found him, a 23-year-old named Danny, had gone through every soft object in the supply room trying to find something the infant would hold on to. A towel, a penguin, a blanket, a cloth ball, a giraffe with dust on its ears. Nothing worked. Then Danny got down on his knees in front of the bottom shelf and found the orangutan. He set it on the floor. Leo walked toward it, pressed his face into its chest, and went quiet for the first time since he was born. And that was the beginning of everything. What followed over the next 9 months is a story about survival and belonging and the slow, non-linear process of a young animal finding its place in a world that was not built with him in mind. There are keepers in this story, and a colony of 60 macaques, and a series of moments that the people who witnessed them will probably never fully stop thinking about. But at the center of all of it, present through every single day of it, was the stuffed orangutan on the bottom shelf that nobody remembered leaving there. The first night, it was the only thing standing between a 500-gram newborn and complete psychological collapse. Leo held it the way macaque infants hold their mothers. Chest pressed in, arms wrapped around, face turned into the fur. His hands worked in slow searching movements against its chest, building the grip strength that his muscles needed and finding, in the process, something that did not move away. Danny sat on the floor of the supply room for a long time that night. He was 23 years old, no formal training in neonatal primate care, and he had just watched a dying infant find more comfort in a forgotten piece of shelf inventory than in anything the zoo's veterinary team had attempted in the previous 4 hours. He did not know what to do with that. He just sat with it. He came back the next morning, and the morning after that. What the stuffed orangutan was present for over the next 6 months would fill a logbook, and in fact it filled several, because Danny kept 2. The official keeper log, precise and clinical, tracking weight benchmarks and feeding volumes and behavioral milestones with the careful documentation of someone who understood that every number told part of a story, and the personal notebook he carried in his breast pocket, small and worn at the corners, where he wrote the things that had no official category. The first time Leo voluntarily released the orangutan to reach for Danny's hand, the way his grip on it changed depending on his mood. Loose and habitual when he was settled, sudden and tight when something startled him. The morning Danny arrived for the early feeding and found Leo sitting in the center of his temporary enclosure, grooming the stuffed animal from the top of its head downward in the slow, methodical way he had watched the colony do to each other through the mesh wall. Nobody had taught him that. He had just watched and remembered and done. Danny wrote about that morning in the personal notebook for longer than he had written about anything else so far. Then he closed it and went to prep the formula and did not show the entry to anyone. The stuffed orangutan was there through the acclimation period, when Leo was moved to the adjacent enclosure and spent 3 weeks pressing his face against the reinforced glass. studying 60 animals he could not yet reach. It was tucked under his arm during the long afternoon sessions at the glass, when his eyes tracked the movements of the colony with an intensity that made the keeper's staff go quiet when they watched it. The fur at its chest was darker in those weeks, from the hours of contact, worn smooth at the places Leo's face returned to most often. Danny watched Leo watch the colony and understood what he was trying to do, and understood why it would not be enough. The social vocabulary of a macaque troop is not something you absorb from the outside. You can learn the surface of it through glass. The broad movements, the obvious hierarchies, the visible corrections, the fine grain of it, the precise angle of a turned shoulder, the specific quality of stillness that signals deference without weakness. All the small signals that make a stranger legible inside a group. Those you only learn by being inside and making mistakes in real time. Leo was going to make mistakes. The only question was how many and how hard. There was an evening in the second week of acclimation when Danny arrived for the evening check and found Leo sitting at the far corner of the adjacent enclosure with his back to the glass, not watching the colony, facing away from it. The stuffed orangutan was pressed against his chest with both hands in a grip Danny recognized from the very first night. Not the loose, habitual carry of recent weeks. The original grip, the one from before. Danny stood outside the fence for a long time. He did not go in. He did not write in either notebook that evening. He went home and came back the next morning. The gate opened 8 days later. Leo walked through it with the orangutan held against his chest, and Danny stood 8 meters back and watched him go. And the 60 animals on Monkey Mountain did not stop what they were doing, did not turn to look, went about their morning as though nothing had entered their world. For Leo, everything had. Now, here is what you have to understand about what came next, because this is the part that most people got wrong when they watched the footage later. The first weeks on Monkey Mountain were not a failure. They were not evidence that Leo was broken or that the transition had been mishandled or that anything had gone wrong. They were exactly what the transition to an established social structure always looks like for an animal entering without credentials. Leo did not know the rules. He misread postures, misjudged distances, approached animals without the vocabulary to do it correctly. He was corrected, firmly and repeatedly, by animals who had been navigating this mountain's hierarchy for years and had no patience for someone who hadn't learned to read the room yet. He was pushed to the edges of the group. He retreated to the far left depression in the rock that became his corner, and he sat there with the orangutan held against his chest, and he watched the center of the mountain from a distance he could not yet close. And every time, he waited and moved back. Danny recorded this each evening in the keeper log without interpretation. He wrote it the same way every time. He felt it differently. Then, on the 24th day, the incident happened. Leo was moving along the base of the granite hill when an adult male came around a corner ledge at speed. The contact was brief. Leo went into the shallow pool at the base of the hill. He swam out immediately and climbed the bank and stood for a moment, dripping, the orangutan soaked and heavy against his chest, where he had somehow kept hold of it through all of it. Then he walked to his corner. He sat down. He held the orangutan in both hands, face pressed in the grip from the first night. He did not move for 50 minutes. Danny was at the fence. He watched the entire thing. He watched Leo sit in that corner for 50 minutes with 60 animals moving through their day around him like he was a piece of the rock, and he felt something shift inside him that he did not have good words for. Not panic. Not despair. Something quieter and heavier than either of those. The feeling of having done everything correctly and arriving at a moment where correctly is not the same as enough. He went home that evening and did not open either notebook. He came back the next morning anyway. He came back the morning after that, and the morning after that, because that is the only move available when you are waiting for something that does not respond to how much you want it to hurry up. The stuffed orangutan came back to the mountain with Leo every day. It was there through the corrections and the retreats and the slow, daily accumulation of a young animal, learning the rules of a world that had not been expecting him. It was there when Mika, a young female whose fur had an unusual orange warmth to it that made her visible from across the enclosure, began appearing near Leo's corner with increasing frequency in late February. Not interacting, not making contact, just appearing nearby, sitting for a while, and leaving. She had done this enough times that Danny started noting it in the keeper log as a pattern worth tracking. And then came the morning that Danny would write about in the personal notebook in longer and more careful detail than anything else in 9 months of entries. It was a Thursday in early March. Ordinary in every visible way. Leo was at the far end of the horizontal bar along the south wall. Mika appeared at the near end and began moving along it in Leo's direction. Loose and unhurried, they met somewhere in the middle. There was a brief negotiation of bodies, the micro-choreography that primates perform without apparent thought. Then Mika turned and began moving back the way she had come. Leo ran after her. He ran after her and left the stuffed orangutan sitting on the bar behind him. Just think about what that means for a second. This was an animal that had held that orangutan through 6 months of overnight feedings and 3 weeks of watching 60 animals through glass and 24 days of corrections on a mountain that didn't know his name. He had held it through the pool incident. He had held it through 50 minutes of sitting alone in a corner while the world moved around him. He had, by Danny's count in the personal notebook, not voluntarily set it down during waking hours a single time since the morning he first picked it up. And now he ran after Mika and left it on the bar. He ran the full length and back before he seemed to notice. Then he stopped. He looked at Mika, who had stopped at the far end and was watching him. He looked at the orangutan, sitting on the bar 7 meters away. The light was coming flat across the mountain. The kind of mid-morning light that makes everything look exactly like what it is. And the orangutan sat there on the bar, looking like what it had always been. A forgotten thing from a supply room shelf that had become, over 9 months, the architecture of one small animal's survival. Leo went back and got it. He held it for the rest of the morning. But he had left it, 43 seconds on a horizontal bar in the March light. He had chosen something else over the one thing he had held on to since the first night of his life. Danny stood outside the fence with his notebook open and did not write anything for a long time. He just stood there and looked at Leo holding the orangutan at the far end of the bar, and at Mika sitting 4 feet away from him, and at the space between them that had not existed 3 months ago. That afternoon, he wrote one sentence in the personal notebook. Then he closed it and put it back in his breast pocket and went to finish his rounds. He walked past the supply room on his way out, the way he walked past it every day. And he thought about a bottom shelf and a thing nobody remembered leaving there, and a morning in late July that neither he nor Leo would ever be able to fully explain. The days after that were not a straight line. Leo still retreated to his corner on the hard days. He still held the orangutan in the original grip when something on the mountain hit him harder than expected. But Mika kept coming back. Day after day. The same pattern. Close and then gone. Close and then gone. The way something returns when it has decided to be present without requiring anything in return. And Leo, slowly and without apparent decision, began moving toward what kept returning, There was a specific afternoon in the third week of March that Danny recorded in the keeper log with 3 lines, and in the personal notebook with considerably more. Mika had settled near Leo's corner, grooming her own arm in the easy way of an animal with nowhere else to be. Leo was holding the orangutan and watching the far wall. After about 15 minutes, without any visible trigger, Leo shifted his position and moved 6 inches closer to where Mika was sitting. 6 inches. Mika did not react. Leo watched the far wall, but he had moved the 6 inches. He had chosen them. Danny underlined that sentence in the personal notebook. Then he crossed out the underline. Then he put it back. An older female in the colony named Bess sat down beside Leo 3 days after that and groomed the back of his neck for 7 minutes. The orangutan was in Leo's lap the entire time. He did not pull away. Danny, outside the fence, uncrossed his arms and stood with his hands at his sides for the first time in weeks. The weeks that followed built on each other in the quiet, non-linear way that real things build. More animals near the corner, longer stretches away from it. The distance between Leo's hand and the orangutan growing incrementally, day by day, in a way that only became visible when you looked at the keeper log numbers across a span of weeks rather than one day at a time. Danny looked at those numbers one evening in late April and stood at the keeper station window for a long time without moving. Then he went outside. Leo was on the upper south ledge, not at the edge. Somewhere in the middle of a loose cluster of animals, the orangutan held in his right hand with the ease of something carried out of habit rather than need. Mika was beside him. 2 other animals Danny recognized from the morning observation logs were nearby. The mountain was settling into its end-of-day arrangements, the quiet negotiations over warmth and space that constitute, in their total, the texture of a life lived among others. Danny took out the personal notebook. He turned to the entry from the morning of July 26th. The first entry, the one he had written sitting on the supply room floor with a 500-gram infant pressed against a rust-colored stuffed animal on the floor beside him. He read it once, then he turned to a blank page and wrote the date. He wrote 2 sentences. He closed the notebook. Whatever those 2 sentences said, he put the notebook back in his breast pocket with the particular care of someone handling something that has just become a record of something that mattered. Then he went back inside to finish the evening rounds. The stuffed orangutan is still on Monkey Mountain. Leo still carries it most days, loosely, tucked against his chest in the habitual way of something kept close, not because it is still necessary, but because it has been close for so long that setting it down permanently would be the thing that felt strange. The fur at its shoulders has gone lighter than the rest, worn thin at the places where small hands held on longest during the months when it was the only thing available to hold on to. Its eyes are open, the way stuffed animals' eyes are always open, looking out at whatever is in front of them without judgment and without need. Some mornings it sits on a flat section of rock near the south wall while Leo moves through the enclosure with Mika close behind him. Danny, watching from outside the fence, notes the distance between Leo's right hand and the orangutan in the keeper log. He does not editorialize. He just writes the number. The distance has been growing since March. Not dramatically. Not in the way that announces itself. Just the ordinary accumulation of days in which a young macaque moves further and further into a life that has finally made room for him, held less and less by the thing that kept him together when nothing else could, and more by everything that has grown up around him since. The orangutan did not ask for any of this. It was on a shelf. Someone put it there and walked away and forgot about it. And then one morning in late July, it became the most important object in one small animal's world. And it stayed that way for as long as it needed to. It had done exactly what it was put on that floor to do. The rest, as it turned out, was always going to be up to Leo.